Our Creator uses much symbolism in His words that He uses to teach those who will hearken to Him His truth. Much is hidden in His word that He has to reveal to us, and it is always revealed to us in His perfect timing. Yeshua spoke in parables for the same reason. The King James translated that we are to enter into our temporary huts with the fruit of goodly trees. That's the word they used. Read this in Leviticus 23:40. You shall take for the first day fruit from the goodly trees, and the hollows of palm trees, and the branches of thick trees, and the willows of the brook, and you shall rejoice before Yahweh Elohim for 7 days. I like the word goodly that the translators chose to use in this verse. Of course, they butchered the verse anyway by translating the Hebrew word for fruit into boughs to throw the reader off course. They definitely did this intentionally because they actually translated the branches into boughs. I mean, two different Hebrew words into boughs in the same verse again, giving other examples of their willful hypocrisy and making the translations. Today I'm going to speak on this goodly fruit that we are to take in with us into our huts and what it means, what it's symbolic of. We are told that when we come before Him 3 times a year to bring our offerings to Him to a place that He has chosen, that we are also to bring a second tithe of our corn, wine, and oil, and livestock, etc., to consume ourselves and to rejoice before Him. This is all to teach us something. He says that if the place is too far to bring these things, that we are to sell them and to bring money instead and to exchange the money for these things when we get there. We read this in Deuteronomy 14, verses 25 and 26. Then you shall turn it into money and bind up the money in your hand and shall go to the place which Yahweh Elohim has chosen. And you shall bestow that money for whatsoever your soul desires, for oxen, for sheep, for wine, or for strong drink, or for whatsoever your soul desires. And you shall eat there before Yahweh Elohim, and you shall rejoice, you and your household. Most all who have lived, who have tried to obey a form of this commandment, have always taken this physically instead of leaning on Him to show them what He wants to teach us from these statutes. There is much hidden meaning in what He wants to teach us. The Hebrew word that was translated into the word goodly means full of majesty or glorious or full of honor. His blessings are meant to teach us something, but we can also lie to ourselves and say that our increase is from Him in hypocrisy. Is your increase that which is from His glory, or did it come from your own efforts apart from walking in agreement with Him? Everything always circles back to why we were created and how He purposed to accomplish molding us in His image. During the Feast of Temporary Dwellings, these huts are to teach us something. I spoke yesterday how He wants us focused on how He made us temporary beings and how He wants us reflecting on His plan to make us in His image and our role in our journey with Him into His image. These huts are to be made out of trees for a reason, and He has us using branches for a reason. Yeshua said that He is the vine, and we are to be the branches of this vine. It is very important to understand that He is His Father's word or His logos, and that He has me to, that He refer to this in many of these videos, what the logos is. It's His very character that His word defines. He says that His Father is the vine dresser. If we are abiding in the vine, which is His logos, we must abide in His logos, abide in His righteousness. All of this symbolism with trees and branches and fruit ties in with the event in the garden with the fruit of the 2 trees in Adam and Eve. The tree of knowledge of good and evil represents deciding right from wrong for ourselves, or eating the bread of men. This is the bad fruit. It is the fruit of wickedness. The other tree that is in the center of the garden is the tree of life. This tree represents our Creator's 7 spirits that teaches His righteousness, or His unleavened bread. This tree of life could also be called the tree of righteousness, because it is His righteousness that will enable us to have eternal life. The goodly fruit is the fruit that comes from this tree. If we eat of this fruit, we become trees of righteousness. Jeremiah speaks of this in chapter 17, verses 7 and 8. Blessed is the man that trusts or whose security is in Yahweh, and whose refuge is in Yahweh. He will be like a tree planted by water that spreads out his roots by the river and will not see the heat when it comes, but his leaves will be green and will not worry in the year of drought, neither will he cease from yielding fruit. If our security and our refuge are in Yahweh, they are in who he is. His name is who he is. It is his righteousness. His entire plan for us is to point us to becoming his righteousness. This is why he wants us making our temporary dwellings out of trees and branches each year. Doing so is symbolic of his tree of life and becoming branches to his vine, which is his logos. And the variety of trees that we can use is symbolic of our variety. Our existence here is temporary, and if we are to become his, we must eat of his fruit and not of the tree of knowledge of good and evil. We must eat off of the unleavened bread of life and not the leavened bread of men. His feasts are to teach us dependence on our increase coming from his blessings and not from our own efforts that came from a path that is not his path, walking with him. He said, "Cursed is the man who trusts in man," in the verses preceding this in Jeremiah 17, referring to trusting in himself. He said, "Cursed is this man, because this man will inherit the death penalty." The reason that he wants us bringing the first fruits of our labors to rejoice before him is to be a constant reminder that it is from his blessings that gave them to us. We are to reflect on this. This is why the fruit that we bring in with us is to be glorious fruit. It gives us something to measure. But if we measure our fruit with, but if we gathered that fruit from that year from our own efforts without walking with him in agreement with him, whatever fruit that we bring in with us before him is not glorious fruit. He says that our own righteousness is like filthy rags to him. The goodly fruit is that which came from him, from his blessings. And yes, we can amass great wealth in this world apart from it being from his blessings. He allows for this. He allows for man to produce wealth apart from his intervention. He set it up this way. He says that he sends his rain and his sunshine to the just and to the unjust. If you walk in your temporary dwelling and your trust is in yourself and you are not hungering and thirsting for his righteousness, it does not matter what you bring before him. You could offer up millions to him and it wouldn't matter. It's nothing but chaff. It is not goodly fruit. So our focus must be on making sure that our increase is from him so that it is goodly to him. All of this also ties into the offering of righteousness that he has cried out for us to lift up to him at this time as we return to him. The water that waters us to become trees of righteousness is the living water that flows out through his Son. I spoke on this recently in a video called The Living Waters, I think was the title of it. This feast is to teach us this. The seventh year Sabbath is also to be instrumental in teaching us dependence on our increase coming from his blessings as well. This is because if we are not walking with him for 6 years, the double increase would not happen in the sixth year, and this would show us that we've gone astray. Plus, he gave us his word to measure ourselves with, to see if we've gone astray. We have a measuring rod. Man has rejected this measuring rod and chose to go their own way and to put their trust in themselves. They turned from his Sabbaths and from his path that would have taught them to depend on him for their fruit, to make it goodly fruit. The goodly fruit that we are to live off of as we walk with him, is his righteousness. And it makes our increase goodly fruit that we bring before him. It is the unleavened bread of life that his Son became, as we must become it. This is why Yeshua said that unless we eat of his flesh and drink of his blood, we cannot enter into eternal life. And he was his Father's logos in the flesh. It's what his flesh represented. We must become as he became. In doing so, we never stop yielding goodly fruit. All of this keeps getting more and more simple as he reveals more understanding. It is all about hungering and thirsting for his righteousness and his kingdom, just as Yeshua said. It is about hungering to one day be out of this temporary dwelling and in his kingdom, and there is only one path to accomplish this. Of course, there is another way out of this temporary dwelling, and that is to eat the bad fruit and to be cast into the lake of fire. I think that eating goodly fruit and bringing goodly fruit before him and rejoicing in it is a better option. So you see, it is much more than just the physical fruit that we are to bring into our temporary dwellings. We have to measure that fruit and make sure that it's goodly fruit. This is what it represents. We are our temporary dwellings, and we must only bring in the goodly fruit into our minds, and this feast is to teach us this and to remind us of this. And his righteousness becomes our soul's desire. It's a paradigm shift. Back there when he says we can purchase whatsoever our souls desire. When he says that we are to rejoice in all of what our soul desires, he wants us undergoing this paradigm shift. He wants us desiring his oil, which is his 7 spirits. And that needs to be our light, what our light's burning from. Either way, we are temporary dwellings. We can feast off of our life in the flesh and the desires of the flesh, or we can rejoice in his righteousness and let him become our delight. Let his righteousness become our delight. He wants us reflecting on what our desires are, and our choices reveal what our desires are. What we rejoice in is the telltale all to our heart's desires. For all of you who are listening to this, who have built your huts for this week and are spending time in them, I hope that you are rejoicing in what he's restoring. It's awesome. If it is, he is turning your bad fruit into goodly fruit. So don't remorse over the past. So just bring glory and delight in the future and what he's offering us. And part of the goodly fruit at this time is offering up to him the offering of righteousness that he has called out for as we return to him. It is clear that the world has hungered and thirsted for the bad fruit, but it is exciting that he is offering us forgiveness if we will turn to his good fruit that comes from the tree of life. You will be found in his favor as you return to this fruit, and he will cast off the bad fruit as far as the east is from the west, and his face will shine upon you.